Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is if you have your natal Mars square or opposing Uranus. Thank you to cafeastrology.com for helping me to gather my thoughts with their information. Now I just did the conjunction between Mars and Uranus, and it's going to have, some of the same themes. I could have lumped them all together, but I chose not to because sometimes people are really listening for one particular thing, and this is going to be more problematic or challenging because these are challenging aspects. The conjunction is one of those things which can be neutral or it can be challenging or more on the positive side depending on what two planets are involved. I don't know, the jury is out about how I would characterize that conjunction. It might have it does have certain challenging aspects to it, but it doesn't have to be, overtly bad or anything. So this is these hard angles, the square or the opposition to Uranus, can make a person very restless because Mars is your drive. It's the way that you act. Okay. So people do not always act the same way. And when I say act, I mean in all different facets of life. How you move, maybe Mars in Taurus moves like a turtle, like a tortoise, and moves very languidly. It's important to note, too, that, for instance, Mars is a personal planet. And so when you're talking about personal planets like Mars, and you may have some other planet in the same sign, and you say, hey, that sounds like my, moon in Taurus or whatever, there will be some similarities. Like, for instance, I have Taurus rising, and I think I have, the tendency to kind of walk very slowly. I don't feel like, hey, what's the rush? Unless I have to for something, why do that? Like, why am I trying to get somewhere so quickly when I don't have to? So some of these things can kind of seem familiar to you if you have other placements as well. So this kind of person is going to be very impatient. So that is kind of a cousin to restlessness, right? When somebody is restless, they can't sit still. They may even be ADHD, hyperactive, where it's hard for them to just sit and do something. Maybe in school they had a lot of problems, but there's also that impulsive quality. And this is very key because Mars can be how like if you do things, do you do things deliberately? Mars and Taurus makes a person more cautious. They think before they look before they leap. They're not going to just do things willy-nilly. And yet if you have Mars in Gemini, if you have Mars in Aries, the sign that it rules, you're going to be more impulsive and want to do things in the moment. They mention nervousness, tension within the person. And from what I understand, Uranus is connected to the nervous system. So that would make perfect sense that that tendency to be high strung. And the thing about it is that being high strung can simply mean that you need to find some ways to calm your nervous system. And it's very interesting. For whatever reason, they've been popping up on my YouTube feed. So this is a thing. I mean, people are into this kind of stuff. So look on YouTube. YouTube has the answer for everything. And don't think that even if you have this and you can relate to what I'm saying, that it means, oh my gosh, I'm doomed. I have to be like this forever. No, knowledge is power. You can learn how to change your course of action, to modify some of these things that may be baked into yourself and you can, or wired into yourself. So, speaking of anger, this can be the anger that explodes, which is really scary. If somebody's like, if you know that somebody's like a hothead, you can just predict, okay, they're so easily triggerable, they get angry, and then everything calms down. And in some cases, you might even find it funny if they're not really dangerous, but they're just like irascible, we call it. But for some people, especially those people who are very like blocked in their emotional self-expression, and with the square, we're talking about a blockage. That can be, it's like any kind of like physical malady that involves a blockage. Then you have this eruption. Somebody has a blocked artery. I mean, I'm like, oh wow, okay, what is a heart attack? Like, what causes a heart attack? Is that from a blocked artery? Yeah, that's a blocked artery, right? Versus a stroke. So I don't know how to articulate it in those terms, but you have this, health emergency because there's something that is not being allowed to flow through. So in this case, it's that sense of equilibrium and being able to come back down from that feeling of anger. People who stuff their emotions, that anger does not just disappear because they don't express it verbally or whatever. It stays within the system. And eventually it can erupt into this volcano. And depending on the circumstances, if the person is very inept at dealing with inept at self-regulation, that could have very dire consequences. So it's important to tap into your emotions in a very clear way in the moment. You don't have to be reactive, but you have to be active, and you have to be able to know exactly why you're feeling the way that you are and articulate your feelings. So if you have this square, that's for sure. Now the opposition is going to act in a similar way. That's why I put these aspects together. But it's the opposition has to do with relationships. So the person it's almost like using another person to rebel. And this, to me, stems from childhood. You should definitely look on your chart with your Saturn, because, sometimes the person has hard angles also to Saturn, and they can have a father wound. And when I say father, the mother could be the disciplinarian, or maybe there is no father in the home whatsoever, and the mother is the one doing this, and that would also apply to the female who is the authoritarian figure. It's really about authoritarian figures, which both of these aspects abhors. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that they hate authority figures. They hate authority being imposed upon them. There may be people that have these aspects who actually loathe anyone in a position of authority, cops, teachers, bosses, and they have problems with these individuals. But with the opposition, this is where I think it really comes into play, because they're projecting their own experiences being dominated by maybe the parent was an authoritarian parent. I'm not saying that they weren't. Maybe they were heavy-handed. And also look at Pluto aspects, because those can indicate some sort of, being smothered energetically, or, with your self-expression. If it's like a square between the sun and Pluto, or an opposition, people abusing their power over the child. And then that child grows up feeling that resentment. So, yeah, that can happen with other people, anybody trying to tell you what to do. Being able to cooperate is so important. Be able to see other people's point of view. And even if you decide that you don't want to do what they want to do, that you handle it in a way that is very diplomatic. It's not about burning bridges or anything like that. And you do possess a lot of energy. So also, if you're a parent and you're listening to this for your child, and you feel that and your child has this placement, and you feel like your child is hyperactive, give your child constructive things to do that can expel that energy, whatever the word should be. Because there are things out there, they might really want to exercise a lot. Maybe they want to play a lot, physically. Let them get their energy out. Maybe it's something more disciplined like martial arts, something where they can take some type of, I don't know if this is really about aggression per se, but certainly the energy, the rebellious energy, and use it as a force for good. That can be very helpful. And it certainly has a dynamic aspect, even though these are hard angles. You can be your own person and still respect other people's boundaries. And sometimes rules involve boundaries. And go after your goals. Don't allow yourself to go down some negative path with this combination that isn't really leading you anywhere constructive. Again, I was saying in my video with the conjunction of these two planets that I saw somewhere else where they talked about being a daredevil. And so I'm going to include that with this because I do think it's probably true that you may love to go fast and do things that, thrill-seeking kind of things. And in some cases, it might be something that isn't going to have that big of a consequence. I mean, sometimes roller coaster rides or whatever don't go so well, and there are tragedies, but it's a pretty good bet that you'll survive a roller coaster ride, but not drag racing, not something where it can involve innocent people, and not something that you think is exciting, but is really very, very dangerous. And I can't think of, a particular type of sport or anything along those lines, but I'm sure that they exist. I mean, skydiving is something that people have done, and maybe they have a lot of safety precautions, but you obviously want to be trained for anything that is very much like that. And some people may be so impatient to do what they want to do that they try to skip over those safety types of precautions through learning how to do something very thoroughly. And it's crucial for you to think before you act because you tend to be very impulsive. It can help you in a crisis because you can be very decisive at a time when it's sorely needed, in that moment when you don't have the luxury of, waiting and pondering it, if it's like some kind of an emergency. But sometimes it can lead you to do things that are not wise. And you don't want to do that. You want to be cooperative, you want to be respectful of other people's rules that they've set up if they are not something that is going to, really ruin your life, and be able to operate within a certain system without losing that sense of individuality. You can do both. If you are somebody who loves being provocative, do so in a way that is not going to be destructive, that is not going to have that negative impact on a situation or the world. And it's just a case of acting with intention, with consciousness, and with restraint, I would say. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.